Okay, we'll call the regular meeting council for Monday, March 8th to order at 3 p.m. Ask for a motion from Councillor Nychuk. The council adopt the agenda for the regular meeting council March 8th as amended to adopt the following. So added item 6.3 lease agreement for the museum, 6.4 lease agreement with Rivertown Rail, 6.5 lease agreement with Home Hardware, 6.6 lease agreement George Lane Park, 6.7 lease agreement curling facility, item 6.8 being a library board applicant, and 6.9 being the West Winds request for funding. That's all of them. So as amended.
I'll give you that motion as amended, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Councillor McMillan, hang on, sorry, before the vote.
Thank you. I was just wondering if we can add a discussion about the return of council to council chambers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Council chambers, we will put that yeah, that can just go under item 7 point. Let's do 7.2 councillor reports, just to have that. Chambers. Accept that amendment, Michael?
Yeah, I'm good with that amendment.
Thank you. All in favor as amended? Carried. Consent agenda. So ask for a motion from Councillor Kinghorn that the following meeting minutes are adopted in accordance with council's procedure bylaw, regular minutes from February 22, special minutes from February 23, special minutes from March 1st, and the strategic priorities chart.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I will give you that motion.
Thank you. Comments, questions? All in favor? Carried. Public comments, anything, Kara?
There are no public comments.
Thank you. Land use bylaw. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The purpose of this item is for Council to consider giving the first reading to Bylaw 4594/2021, which contains the recommended amendments to the land use bylaw. The recommended amendments are based on comments and concerns received during the land use bylaw monitoring program from internal stakeholders, from residents, and developers. The current land use bylaw was adopted on April 24th, 2017, and it is a notable departure from more traditional land use bylaws. Due to the more innovative nature of this document, it was recommended that it be monitored through an in-depth land use bylaw program. That program was launched in October of 2017, and it ran for 2 years. That program allowed town administration to collect comprehensive feedback and comments, and those comments were carefully reviewed internally and analyzed and resulted in the proposed amendments that are before you today. So every time there was an issue or a difficulty related to something in the land use bylaw, it was identified in a series of categories, and administration used a tracking sheet to track all of those key concerns. So then they could be, amendments could be created from them. Those amendments were initially discussed with members of council at the Committee of the Whole meeting on August 10th, 2020. At that meeting, there were no specific concerns that were raised. Since the meeting, administration has been working on drafting the regulations that would actually incorporate those proposed ideas and changes into the land use bylaw. The work, including background research or best planning practices, that needed to be reviewed in order to ensure that the proposed regulations would follow, for example, the requirements of the Municipal Government Act. And we also had discussions with key internal stakeholders. And we had subsequent thorough review of the entire document to identify whether there were any further issues. So through all of those processes, administration did identify several additional matters, which led to more proposed changes to the land use bylaw. The key changes to the land use bylaw now include, for example, a process to allow applicants to obtain a temporary building permit before their development permit appeal period is complete. So that allows them to start their development, which would only be footings and foundation if a building permit is required during the appeal period, but they would need to stop if an appeal is received. Changes also include changes to liquor store and cannabis regulations to make sure that they align well with each other. The addition of regulations for short-term rentals. Basically, we're referring to Airbnbs in this case. The addition of regulations for pageantry features. So pageantry features are signs, banners, flags, etc., that are temporary in nature to advertise new and developing communities. We are proposing reducing the landscaping requirements for 1 and 2 dwelling units by only requiring 1 tree and 2 shrubs, adding regulations to allow banner signs for commercial uses, whereas before it would have just been for community groups and community events. The removal of expirations for signage development permits, the addition of amenity space standards for developments with 8 or more dwelling units, and the addition of bicycle storage requirements for developments with 5 or more units. These are just some of the key changes, but one of the attachments in this report does include all of the track changes. And then the attached bylaw is the clean version that has incorporated the changes and looks how it would look if this bylaw were to be passed. The administration's recommendation is that council give first reading to land use bylaw 4594/2021, and that council direct administration to proceed with scheduling the required public hearing for land use bylaw 4592/2021 on April 12th, 2021 at 3:00 p.m. That concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, so just out of clarification for me, when you were mentioning about the appeal period, I'm assuming that's the 21-day appeal period.
Correct.
And it's in that timeline that they can, within that timeline, they can put footings in, etc.
Yes, if they require a building permit, which you
Right.
would if
You
there is a
do.
footing or a foundation required. You wouldn't if it's like a sign or something like that,
Right.
because there's all types of developments. But if we're talking about a building requiring a building permit, they're allowed to start footings and foundations during that 21 days. And that's not something that we allowed people to do before. We got that idea from Medicine Hat and Lethbridge. They do it.
Okay. Because probably the biggest complaint that I've been given from builders is the timeline to get going, especially when they're building in existing neighborhoods, whether it's infill or in a new development on a bare lot, right?
Right. Yes.
And I appreciate what you're, absolutely what you've done there is moving in the right direction for what they need. But one of the other pieces is, and is the setbacks in existing neighborhoods. And when they have to apply for a variance, whether it be in the Hamptons or in the Northwest or Montrose, and they have to apply for variances all the time. And then that again triggers the 21-day piece, correct?
That's correct. Any
So
variance would.
Any variance does. So when we're doing these setbacks and stuff, I completely, I love our land use bylaw. I love what we've done and everything, but I also completely understand that there's significant differences in how a home looks in, say, the new Spitzy Crossing area that has to be exactly with our land use bylaw, or something in the Hamptons or the Northwest. So I know these guys are always asking for variances.
Mm-hmm.
We're posting for 21 days and approving all of them, from what I understand, from what I've been told. So, we had talked before about a grandfathering clause in existing neighborhoods, et cetera. Can you tell me where, kind of where that's being addressed in this? Because I'm reading it and I'm not really seeing it, but I know it's there.
Okay, I think I understand your question. So administration believes that there is still value in applying the land use bylaw to vacant lots that are, like, for example, in the Hamptons or Montrose. We understand that because of their lot, the configuration and the design of the lots, that they probably are going to need to have variances. That being said, we believe that there are still opportunities to get the development closer to the intention of what the land use bylaw is. And there have been developers that have been able to create designs that certainly get their final product closer to what the town is looking for in terms of our land use bylaw standards. They still require variances, but it is much closer to what our standards are as compared to what their initial proposal was. So we have talked with developers, and their main concern really was the timing and allowing them to do what is called a voluntary waiver of claims. So starting the development before the 21 days is over appears to have alleviated most of their concerns.
Okay, so that makes complete sense. So you've taken that one, which goes back up into this appeal period, and you can get your footings going, but you're still saying, no, you still have to apply for a variance. We're just saying you just don't have to wait the 21 days before you can even dig a hole.
Exactly, because for example, the distance between the front of the facade versus the front of the garage, maybe they can get it down. Maybe they can't get it down to 1 meter, but they could get it down to 5.5,
Right.
as opposed to 8 or 9 meters, which maybe that's what they wanted initially. So we're getting closer, but we understand that the lots were designed in a different era.
So Sarah, what's the 21 day period for something like that? Like that's in play. So you request and the town posts the little A-frame sign out on the lot.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody reads it. You know, like why do we have it? Why the 21 days? Why 21 days? Why not a week? Why not 0 days? Why not 14 days? Why 21? It's a long time. It's almost a month.
The 21 days comes from the Municipal Government Act. So
Okay.
that is not the town's choice. That's from the Municipal Government Act. But then I guess another part of answering that question would be why have them apply for a variance. That goes back to having standards in our land use bylaw, and administration believes that those standards are still valid for any new development, with the understanding that there are going to be some existing lots in the town that aren't going to be able to comply, but we can get them as close to compliance as possible. So working in that paradigm, the tool available to municipalities is a variance.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah.
Throwing the questions out there and creating a discussion on it, because I'm going to encourage these guys to definitely attend the public hearing so that we can get clarity from their end too, right? As to how this all
Yes.
works. Yep.
Yes.
Dynamite.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Doing first reading. Okay, I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Cooey that council give first reading to bylaw 4594 2021, and council direct administration to schedule a public hearing for bylaw 4594 2021 on April 12th, 2021 at 3 p.m.
I will give you that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. No further questions. All in favor? Carried. Right on. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Leanna?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I wanted to have a background behind me and it did not work for me. So I'm going to go with just my name in front of on the screen. So I wanted to say thank you, Mayor and Council, for allowing me an opportunity to present to you our 2020 unaudited financial statements. Administration has prepared our financial statements in accordance with the Canadian Public Sector Board standards and Canadian General Accepted Accounting Principles. It is the responsibility of the town external auditor, which is Avail CPA, to audit the financial statements and express their independent opinion on the reliability and accuracy of our financial statements. The audited financial statements will be presented during the April 26, 2021 regular council meeting by the auditors. The unaudited report for the 2020 year end indicates a net surplus of $4.38 million before amortization against a net zero budget. Administration has responsibly managed the 2020 approved operating budget with a high sense of financial discipline. The surplus that we're presenting to you today is due to higher investment income, which is also including gains on some of our investments. We have higher grant revenue from renewal and then from our municipal support operating transfer grant. We see a slight savings of our salary, wages, and benefits due to unfilled staff vacancies and numerous net savings from other expense categories. Administration is recommending a transfer of the surplus of $4.35 million to the following reserves to reduce the utility surplus diversion and increase the general municipal reserve for the RCMP unionized retroactive payment. We are requesting $4 million for the tax stabilization reserve, $350,000 to the general municipal operating reserve. As we discussed during the 2021 operating budget, we presented council, administration presented council, an opportunity that we can get off our utility diversion. We were anticipating a significant surplus as we are presenting currently, and this would lessen the tax impact to our residents and our taxpayers by allowing us to pull money on an annual basis to lessen the impact of the utility diversion. Does anybody have any questions?
I do not see any questions coming forward. Sorry, just go back for a second. You said 4.38 million, and
Correct.
we've got two motions that are totaling 4.35 million. So there's 30K going to,
We're just going to leave it in the unrestricted surplus.
the mayor's slush fund.
I will not say that.
Okay. That's too bad. Okay. Motion on the floor. Actually, there isn't. Motion from Councillor Moore that council received administration's report on the unaudited operating budget financial performance report for the year ended December 31st. And the council authorized admin to transfer the sum of $4 million and as part of the net surplus for 2020 fiscal year to the tax stabilization reserve. And the council authorized admin to transfer the sum of $350,000 as part of the net surplus for the 2020 fiscal year to the general municipal reserve for the 2020 portion of the RCMP retroactive payment.
Thank you, Mayor. I will make that motion.
Very much. Questions, comments? None? All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Leanna.
Thank you.
Center Street Bridge, Kaylee.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am bringing forward today the Center Street Bridge tender update and what we have received. Just a reminder, Center Street Bridge, we were doing some bearing repairs and refurbishments along with some railing and some additional items. The tender was sent out and we had included a few items within the tender when we sent it out as a deletable optional items. Should we receive our tenders back maybe higher than our approved budget. Our approved budget this year is $810,000. And of all of our three bids, they all came in over budget. With even the removal of the deletable and optional items that we put in there, we're still sitting over budget. Something to note is that the overall condition of our girders on this bridge are currently in good condition. And so one of the items we had in there as kind of an optional item was doing a little extra work and actually repainting the entire set of all the girders underneath the bridge. So by pulling that back and just doing the localized areas, that does address the condition of the girders, which is ideally what we're kind of going towards. Painting them, getting them cleaned up was more of an optional item and more aesthetic. Additionally, we were planning on doing the replacements of the bearings. So as you may remember, last year we had gone out and got some pricing on replacing of the railings, and it did come back quite a bit higher. Something also to keep in mind with replacing of the bearings and doing that work on the bridge underneath is that we're dealing with waterway access and also environmental. So making sure we have the appropriate approvals in place to be in the water to complete the work, but additionally taking into consideration that the paint on this bridge does have lead in it, and so it does all need to be captured. So there's a little bit of a higher risk to completing this project. All of our bids did come in over budget, and so we are hoping that that we would be able to go forward and for complete negotiations with our tenders that have been submitted by the companies who have submitted them. We do believe we can get it under and within the budget. With that said, though, if we go into negotiations with these contractors, they do have the opportunity to say, actually, you're taking out too much of the work, and we would like to pull back our tender at this point. Was there any questions or any further clarity I can provide for council?
Michael?
Thanks, Mr. Snodgrass. So I'm unclear what we're eliminating to get to 810. What are we going to keep checking off the list that we're not going to do to get to the budget?
For sure. So what we're trying to do is tackle the items that need to be taken care of. So the items that are really going to give us longevity on the life of the bridge. So one of the items we were looking to complete that's being removed at this point is there is a pinch point on the north side of the bridge where the pathway doesn't line up with the bridge, and we've got a guardrail in there, which is for safety reasons. But just the way it's installed, it does provide a bit of a pinch point, and so we were hoping to address kind of getting that resolved. Additionally, we were planning on, like I had mentioned, painting all of the girders, so doing a washing of all the girders and then painting all of the girders, where we're actually planning on pulling back and doing just the spot repairs where we have corrosions and getting that all cleaned up. Additionally, one of the other items that was being removed were taking out the deck drain extensions, where we have deck drains for everywhere except for 2 deck drains are missing. We're putting the extensions on, so it's kind of more of a nice to have. It might potentially extend some of the life on the girders. Again, not really a necessity. It was more of a nice to have and not a requirement on the bridge. And the other item, and so that was the majority of the kind of the nice to have. What we're really pulling this back to is taking a look at the girders, refurbishing all of our girders, because those are the pieces that really are going to give us that 25-year additional lifespan to the bridge, because they're in pretty rough shape, and doing the railings. So taking those railings off, getting them cleaned up, because they're not looking wonderful. They're more of an aesthetic piece. And then we can also, while we are addressing the railings, is bringing them up to code just for a little bit of safety, which, we've been grandfathered in the past just because they are existing, but we can also address those and bring them up to today's current code for bridges.
Okay, thanks. Riley, I see that you're with us. In regards to the railings, I thought you had mentioned we were just going to replace them all because it was cheaper than painting them. Did I make that up in my own mind, or just as a point of clarification? I don't care if you paint them or replace them really, but I thought somewhere along the conversation of all this stuff that had been mentioned.
It was when we had Volker involved last time helping us out with some of the pricing. That was something they had suggested. We do kind of flip-flop between what is actually the most economical solution, whether it's removing, repainting, temporary measures, or just bringing in new ones. So that is something that's always been, from a cost perspective, pretty close. And sorry, Kaylee, could you also give council some clarification in terms of the middle rail as well as the redoing the deck? Because those are 2 things we've talked about as well.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, you're right, Riley. So there are, on the bridge, there are your 2 exterior rails, which are the ones that we're planning on doing, which are your handrails. There is an additional rail in there that we won't be doing, we were looking at doing, but it's actually in great condition, is the bridge rail between the pedestrians and the driving lane. So right now it's galvanized, and that was a piece that we were going to paint to match the railings. However, we've taken that piece off of the scope. Additionally, we could look at doing some further chip and seal, but I actually had spoken with Roads, and they had recently done some spray patch repairs along the bridge back in 2019. And so doing that kind of work and dealing with the chip seal does help us with our deck condition. However, our deck isn't up for repair and replacement at this point, and it's in actually relatively good condition based on our last inspections. So we're removing kind of a lot more of that expense around dealing with the chip and seal and kind of continue what we're already doing, which is spray patching as we need to go along to keep that seal and keep the condition of the deck in good condition.
Councillor Masterman?
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. So, Kaylee and Riley, I imagine this might be for both of you. Just any discussion that I've ever had with any residents about that bridge, they always ask me, you know what's coming? They always ask me, is that bridge capable of withstanding as much flow as we got in 13 or more flow, especially in light of the fact that there is no railway bridge anymore to slow it before it hits the main bridge. I'm not trying to be a fear monger. It's just this is a question that comes up all the time when I'm talking to people and about the bridge, and I just want to be able to give them some kind of answer that actually is based on something other than just my optimism.
Can I jump in, Kaylee?
Yes, please.
So a couple of things, Bruce. The bridge has historically taken quite a debris and survived. I have been on, adjacent to the deck while hose are trying to pull out logs that are jammed up against it with a lot of backlog. So there is a fair amount it can withstand. That said, we've never done any calculations or engineering on what's the limits or how far will that go. We are looking at new bearings as roughly 25 years, Kaylee. And so are we going to get another event of that size within the next 25 years? So there is a bit of an odds back and forth on this too. Can we afford a new bridge right now, which would be another question. So we're better off probably at this point in time extending the life of the existing bridge. And then finally, once you get to certain elevations, you start seeing a lot of overland flow. And so that overland flow is something that relieves pressure on the bridge. And so that is something that helps as well. And if we were to relieve pressure on the bridge, that might be actually a cheaper solution, is trying to pursue more overland flow. That was something we had kind of built into when we were looking at a longer bridge and a new transportation corridor there. We had looked at an overflow channel specifically for that purpose. And it could be something we looked at again. But again, no engineering has been done on that. Does that help, Bruce?
Yeah, it does. Thanks. Thanks very much. I mean, I know we definitely haven't had a fairy godmother or godfather drop by with millions and millions of dollars for us to build a new bridge. And but maybe that will happen one of these days. So
maybe.
Thank you.
But I get long answer short is we don't really have that answer, just what we know from past experience.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Riley. Thanks so much.
Kaylee, just for my clarification, with the reduced scope, the rail will still be refurbished?
That is correct.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Sorry, I'm going to clarify that, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you.
The outside rails, the middle galvanized rail will not. So the outside rails that are that beigey brown rust, yes, those two.
Those two will. Okay. Beige is a nice word for that color. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass, and thank you, Kaylee and Riley. I guess my question is, what if when you go back to renegotiate with the lowest bidder, and what happens if they do say they don't want the work with the scope being reduced?
Absolutely. That leaves us in a position of then going to the next lowest bidder and negotiating with them in hopes of getting within budget. And then again, you just kind of proceed in line of lowest bidder to the next.
And then if it comes out that none of them want the work, is it going back out to tender, or how does that work?
Unlikely going back out to tender would really result in us getting any better pricing, short of, I guess you would have a more defined scope for them to bid on. It would just likely result in us coming and having a conversation with council as to how we would really like to proceed on this project, knowing that we have reduced the scope from what was originally intended to be covered with this budget.
Thank you.
No further questions. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor McMillan that council directed Min to negotiate with lowest bidder to decrease the contract amount by reducing the scope of work in order to meet the 2021 budget allocation, and council confirm the minimum scope of work to include painting the outside rails and the bearing refurbishment, and the council authorized mayor and CAO to execute the contract to the contractor that is successful in negotiations, and the council directed Min to return the council with any budget amendments that change the scope or exceed the project contingency of 10% of contract value.
I'll give you that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Kaylee. License agreement, Museum of the Highwood. Well, we'll give them all to you, Jody.
My apologies, Counselor. You know, technology is always easy to work with when we're doing this.
You were sound asleep.
Well, I was working. I wouldn't say sound asleep, but so please help me. This is my first time doing the out of closed session. Do I just read all of the resolutions and then council does their vote?
Yeah, just because we're into a public meeting now, just give a very basic overview of what you're wanting to do.
Okay.
Very
and then
much,
you won't read the resolution.
Very Cole's notes.
Okay, I can handle that.
And I'll make the motion.
For community facility license agreement with the Museum of the Highwood. Town has been in an agreement with the operators, Museum of the Highwood, for a number of years. Their agreement is up for renewal at the end of this year. And we're asking council for direction to negotiate that agreement with the Highwood Museum.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That's for a motion from Councillor Moore. Council direct administration negotiate a new community facility license agreement for the occupation operation of the Museum of the Highwood, and the council direct administration to present the final draft of the agreement to council for approval prior to execution.
I will make that motion. Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. Questions, comments from council? All in favor? Carried. Next.
All right, next we have a lease agreement with the owners of the rail car, also known as the Whistle Stop Cafe in downtown High River. The town leased these lands to the rail car owners back in 2015. Their agreement is up for renewal effective 2020. Due to COVID-19, we executed a one-year extension, so that agreement is up for renewal April 2021. Looking for council's direction to negotiate a new lease agreement with the rail car owners.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Kinghorn, you had your hand up there for a second. Was that from the previous one that I missed, or?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just wondering if we could just have Jody read each one of these. I think we've got about another 4 to do, and could we not do a vote on all of them at one lump instead of going through it on each individual one?
Jody only has one more after this one, and then it goes to Darlene for a couple of them, but I still, yeah, I get what you're saying. I think we can still kind of roll through these pretty quick though, Jamie. I agree. I'm all with you. Any questions, comments on the Rivertown Rail? Ask for a motion from Councillor Masterman. The council directed administration negotiate a new lease agreements for the lands located at 408 First Street Southwest, High River, which is located southeast corner, larger parcel, blah, 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 with Rivertown Rail being the dining rail car beside the museum. And the council direct administration present the final draft of the agreement to council for approval prior to execution.
I'll make that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Carried. Last one, Jody with Home Hardware.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The town of High River has had a lease agreement in place with Home Hardware since late 80s. This is for a southwest portion of the recreation complex parking lot, which Home Hardware uses for their parking area. And again, we are asking for council's direction to not only negotiate an agreement, but we have come to an agreement for a 1-year term with 2 options to extend for an additional 1 year. So we are asking council for direction to execute that lease agreement.
Okay, and the 1-year agreement is due to possible expansion of the pool facility. So we don't want to go much further than that currently.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So we know what we're doing with the pool. That. As for a motion from Councillor McMillan that council directed Min to enter into a new lease agreement with Home Hardware stores, and the council authorizes mayor and CAO to execute the lease agreement on the above noted terms and conditions.
I'll give you that motion.
Go. Questions, comments? All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Jody. George Lane Park, Darlene.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We have the community facility lease agreement between the town of High River and Lions Club of the Highwood. This agreement is for George Lane Park, including the campground. As you know, the Lions have managed the campground and lands of George Lane Park, including facilities, for a number of years, including the 5-year term that ends October 15th, 2021. So we are looking for council's direction to negotiate a new agreement with the Lions Club.
Thank you. Questions? That's for a motion from Councillor Cooey that council direct administration negotiate a new agreement for the lands abutting the Highwood River known as George Lane Park, located in High River, with the Lions Club of the Highwood. And the council direct administration to present the final draft of the agreement to council for approval prior to execution.
I will give you that motion.
Thank you. Questions, comments? All in favor? Carried. Shuffleboard.
The current community facility lease agreement between the town of High River and the Foothills Shuffleboard Association is up for renewal August 31st, 2021. The Foothills Shuffleboard Association currently occupies and operates the curling facility within the recreation complex, including the curling rink, upper and lower viewing areas, and lounge through the months of May to August annually, for a 5-year term ending in August. The Town of High River and Foothills Shuffleboard Association wish to negotiate a new agreement for the occupation of this facility. We are looking for council's direction in that negotiation of a new agreement.
Thank you. As for a motion from Councillor Nychuk, the council directed Min to negotiate a new agreement, including the lease rate for the curling facility with the Foothills Shuffleboard Association, and the council direct administration present the final draft of the agreement to council for approval prior to execution.
I'll make that motion for you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Questions, comments? See none, hear none. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much, Darlene.
Thank you.
Library board applicant, Kara.
So good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We have an application to present today to you for Ms. Laura Byers. She previously served on the High River Library Board and is very passionate about rejoining the High River Library Board. So we are recommending her for reappointment at this time.
Thank you. Ask for a motion from Councillor Masterman, the council direct administration to appoint Ms. Laura Byers to the High River Library Board for a 3-year term ending October 31st, 2023.
I'm happy to make that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Very much. Questions, comments? See none, hear none. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Item 6.9 being the West Wind's request for funding support. Chris, do you want to just speak to this, or somebody speak to this real quick?
Certainly. The request that came before council was regarding the $14,000 contribution to fund their affordable housing strategy. As stated in the committee of the whole meeting earlier today, we can find that $14,000 if council wishes to allocate it to West Winds to proceed with that affordable housing needs assessment, not a strategy, needs assessment, let's be clear, and that we would work collaboratively with them on their affordable housing needs assessment.
Sounds good. So a couple of going back to comments that were made in council chambers as to what kind of the town, what West Wind wants to do and what the town possibly might want to do. So I support giving West Winds this funding to do their assessment. It's a regional thing, but I think there's benefit to the town of High River. This kind of thing is not on our strategic priorities chart at this time, but I think, you know, in supporting West Winds and doing this, that once they have that information back, you know, council at that time or before, we could do it tomorrow if we wanted to, but or the next time we have our quarterly strategic meeting, that's when we can kind of decide if we want to elevate this affordable housing discussion onto our strategic priorities chart, because currently it is not there. So that's the way I kind of see this going. I do think there's value in the work that West Winds is doing that we can use at the end of the day. So and may or may not trigger us to further this specifically for the town of High River. So it's kind of where I'm at. Any other questions, comments? See Michael leaning in, so I'll wait. Go ahead, Michael.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Understanding the importance of this in our community, I'm not questioning that. I'm questioning the timing of doing an assessment like this right now. And also, we have Shelley that has a pretty good grip on what's going on in our community. And if as a council, we're giving consideration, which I think we all are, at developing strategy and plan going forward to help understand, mitigate, prepare, move forward on an issue like this in our community. I know it's only $14,000, but 14,000 is 14,000. I value the job that West Winds does in our community. It's not anything against that. I'm just trying to look at this very holistically, and really from a regional consultation on assessment. Are we getting, for lack of a better term, the bang for our buck? And yeah, please take this the right way, council. It's not to question our understanding of a critical need like this for residents of our community. It's how are we best serving ourselves and serving those residents? So I just wanted to open that discussion up. I don't know if I'm the only one looking at it that way, but I'd appreciate some council comments as well.
No, it's a fair comment. So you're questioning, you know, the $14,000. Is it better just to retain that money and use it for our own study if that's what we're going to do?
Yeah, are we going to end up with something more than what Shelley might be able to tell us already? What's going on in our community? She,
Right.
All due respect to Shelley, she has a really good finger on the pulse. You know, to use that term. She.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, she's. I don't know if she. I don't know if she's on still or not. But if I had some comments for her, I sure would appreciate it.
You're questioning if the West Winds study is going to provide us any more information than what we already know.
Yeah.
And we just spent $14,000.
Yeah.
Very fair comment. Councillor Cooey.
Thanks very much. I guess my question is around, and please correct me if I am wrong. My understanding was there was other municipalities requested to also support this project with funding. And I believe at the date that it had been presented, those had said no. I see Councillor McMillan has her hand up. Are you going to answer my question?
Go
I
ahead,
can.
Carol.
And I'll keep my hand up because I have another question or comment. Yes, it was, the opportunity was provided to areas that have that we know already need affordable housing. So it was offered to Longview, Turner Valley, Black Diamond, and High River, because those are the areas that have been targeted that they need. Turner Valley declined because they're looking for a new CAO and they were focusing on that. And Longview declined. Black Diamond accepted and paid their proportional rate because they're aware that they would benefit from this study. So then High River was the only remaining community that was approached. So that kind of, I know there was some conversation brought up in the committee of the whole about a little bit of the hesitancy about it being regional, but actually it's more the fact that with the stakeholders who, like for example, Black Diamond, investing in it, possibly High River, the focus would be in those communities because they're contributing, and then it would be, as Chris said, that collaborative approach. So does that provide clarity for you, Councillor Cooey?
It provides clarity, absolutely. I guess my one concern is with only those two communities, is West Winds truly going to get the picture that they want for the communities that they serve? But that's a question for them.
Council can also adjust the $14,000 ask, right? So if you don't, it's a $14,000 ask right now. If you don't want to fund that amount, you can change the amount as well. So, Carol, your hand is still up.
Yes, please. I just
go ahead.
So I think where I'm coming from, and I'm glad you mentioned that as well, Mayor Snodgrass, because when Lorraine Ingalls presented, she said, you know, it could be anything up to that. And I know, and it's a hard one because I know I'm wearing my West Winds board member hat, but I've done a lot of reflecting upon this. And this is not me doubting Shelley and her team's ability at all. If anything, I think this is a beautiful enhancement, because this is why I spoke to in committee of the whole. Do we actually have the resources right now ourselves? Not talking about that grand strategy, but to do a needs assessment, when to me, this is a gem of an opportunity right now, because we have the expertise. And when you think about it, Lorraine being even from that provincially mandated panel of housing studies, that they've done that broad report, and that's through that report they're refining throughout municipalities. So I just want people to think about that this is kind of, in my mind, a cost-saving tool, because it's not doubting our own capacity, or the qualities and the qualifications. It's a case of this, in my mind, is a great stakeholder partnership. And I feel it would be more cost-effective, that we would get bang for a buck with the 14,000 versus having an external consultant who might not have the pulse. I do believe, I know Shelley and her team, that's a given, they've got the pulse of our community, but so does West Winds. That's why I think it's a great marriage, but that's just my comment. So thank you, Mayor Snodgrass.
Councillor Masterman.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. So I have to admit, when this came up at council, I thought it sounded, like an idea, and I guess I also am feeling some questions, having some questions over the fact that they're trying to get a regional perspective, but there's at least a couple of municipalities that are not going to be participating, and yet I agree with Michael, like it's $14,000, but it's $14,000, and it's not like it's $500,000 or something like that. But I guess I just haven't seen anything that really convinces me this is the best way of dealing with this issue, and for us to come up with some kind of local initiative or solution or strategy around affordable housing. And so I'm sorry, I'm kind of going back and forth right now. So thanks.
Yep. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I just had a question around the $14,000, because if you're originally contemplating 4 municipalities involved in the study, you were hoping to get some kind of support from all of them, and then if 2 drop out, it means usually that the amount of the final 2 would go up, and it just if you've got a certain amount of money that you need for this study, it seems like you're not going to get that much.
I think that's what Carol. Sorry, Dawn. I think that's what Carol was mentioning before, is that because there's only the 2 communities involved now, that they've reduced the scope significantly to fit. Is that correct, Carol? Rather than...
Yes, and it wasn't a dropout. This is where we have to remember. It wasn't that there was it was the option was presented. So it's not like 2 dropped out. It's like 2 declined, if that makes sense. And yes, the scope will change. If anything, from my perspective, I thought it benefits High River that there's less community, because they can actually refine the lens on the 2 communities that have. But like I said, I hope that clarifies a little bit.
I guess, but if you're reducing the scope, then you're reducing the benefits as far as I'm concerned.
I see it focusing more on High River. So I think the word that I'm having trouble with that's being used is to deal with this issue. I'm not convinced there is an issue yet. I don't think we have enough information to say there is an issue yet. That's where I'm struggling with this stuff. I don't know that we have an issue. We haven't looked at this enough, or so when we talked about it, when we initially put our strategic priorities together, there was no council votes that went towards affordable housing. The only votes that went there were some staff votes. So there's a big issue there. We need a lot more information to clarify that this issue exists in High River. So that's where I'm saying about the $14,000 would that spending that, would that help inform us as to whether there's an issue or not? Because if we just blindly say, yes, we have to do this, we're into tens of thousands of dollars with consultants and everything else and the time and blah, 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 blah. It'll cost a hell of a lot more than $14,000 and may just tell us that, no, there's not really an issue. The other thing is with communities, okay, say there is an issue. Then what do we do? Is the town of High River going to start building these affordable houses? No. You're going to tell a developer, okay, you got to build affordable houses. And they're going to go, no, because we can't make any money on them. So, you know, it's a thing it's something we have to be very, very careful of. And, you know, we got to be very careful of it, because communities can go down this rabbit hole under the guise of caring and concern for everybody, but there's not a lot that municipalities can physically and actively do unless you're prepared to spend a few $1 million in addressing whatever that issue might be. So that's my take on it. So I know $14,000 sounds like a lot of money right now, but it sure doesn't to me when I start to really assess where this rabbit hole could go. Carol, and then back to Kathy, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I think the key to remember is this is a needs assessment. And that my understanding is once the data is extrapolated and shared, it would of course go towards if the town, because remember this was presented to us before there was any mention of the town thinking about an affordable housing strategy. So this is a tool for stakeholders, largely West Winds and Habitat for Humanity, to collect the data in a needs assessment. This is not a study. And then I think we have to give a little bit of acknowledgement about their expertise, about where they're going to go with the data in the future. It might not, my take is, it wouldn't be all on the burden of, okay, High River, you need affordable housing, it's all yours. I mean, West Winds communities and Habitat for Humanity know how to apply for grants and everything as well. Like, so that's all I'm just saying is we're kind of, when you mention a rabbit hole, you're right, we're falling down into the affordable housing strategy when this is a needs assessment that would be a tool for that strategy.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Good point. Councillor Cooey.
Not that I want to put her on the spot, but I see Shelley has joined us. So I just wondered if she had anything to add to the conversation or some of the comments that have come forward.
If you're available, Shelley, always appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Councillor Cooey. I think I am, in fact, on the spot, but I certainly don't mind. Of course, affordable housing is near and dear to our hearts. We want to make sure that every citizen has a place to live in High River. I think our response to this particular ask was there's a bigger picture, and I think that's all. I think our program shines a spotlight on one particular area. I think a long-term strategy is going to provide a long-term solution, and so that's all the response that we had provided. We do have a number of developers that actually have inquiries about affordable housing that I think come through planning and sometimes talk to our department, mostly about need. And we don't necessarily have the information to respond to that. Because part of that is, yes, it's a need around a needs assessment, but it's also that broad town plan. So love that the new area structure plan talks about high density. That's a huge win. So we're not just building single family homes and communities, we're making sure that we have multiple housing types. We're moving along the right line, but I think when Khalid and I had met, and I want to include Kate as well, because she is much closer to this in our program, looked at information that we could really benefit from a comprehensive long-term plan. It's not saying in any way that a needs assessment is going to cause any harm. My understanding is that West Winds and Habitat for Humanity will also be working with consultants. I could be wrong. And so the thought was that if there was consistency among the studies and the plans, the better long-term. It is important that we know about our inventory. There is a need, but there's need for all types of housing, not just affordable housing. And so that was a non-answer to your question, Councillor Cooey. I know when you were on the FCSS board, we talked often about just housing for men, and that's more, we're looking at social housing in that regard. And this is more about affordable housing, whether that's rentals and ownership. And so there is a broad spectrum of need. The hope was just to provide you with enough information to make a decision, and I feel like I muddied the waters quite
Thank you,
nicely.
Shelley. I appreciate your perspective.
Thanks, Shelley. Chris?
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I just wanted to add and build on Councillor McMillan's point is we're getting tied up in studies and strategies when this is really a data extrapolation process. This is taking census data, demographic data, economic information, and indicator data, and pulling that all together into one kind of form to determine what the need within the community actually is. There's a little bit of outreach in most needs assessments, and I haven't seen their scope of their work or their RFP at all, but in the needs assessments that I've done and completed, and I've done 5 of them for Invermere in 15 years, that they are more data collection to say, here's what the need is, here's what you should be working on. You need an affordable housing strategy. And then all those kind of cascading issues kind of come out from that perspective. But I have seen housing strategies come or housing needs assessments come forward and say that there is no need for affordable housing within your community, that the need isn't there. And it may very well fulfill to say you need more attainable housing that meets these kind of parameters of small lots, no garages, those types of things, and give you that recommendation. So that's kind of what it is. And this is an opportunity to have a collaborative approach and deal with it. It will fit within, what we're concerned about was the piecemeal approach, not looking at housing at an overall big picture kind of perspective, and the timing. The timing is a little bit early for us. We would probably be talking about this with council probably in the fall of 2021 or early spring 2022 is kind of the time frame. So it's a little bit early for us. But this decision is entirely within councils whether to give them $15,000 or not, and that would allow us the time to figure out what else to do with all the other housing continuum issues that we have to face. So thank you.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I was just going to add that the federal government today decided to go ahead with the census for 2021, and that gives it us for our own town a lot of data about housing and needs and everything else like that. Is that valid concern? Is that we're going to get that, although we wouldn't get it until 2022, but would that be enough to make a kind of a needs assessment from that data?
That current data that we would see in the spring of 2022 through the census would provide a good foundation, right? It would give us good population, good demographic breakup, good ethnicity data, and they do release that in phases and stages. The socioeconomic information usually is not until usually 2 years out past the census date. So that would be 2023-ish that we would see the socioeconomic data. They would dribble out some stuff, but they may be under a little bit of urgency because they're trying to, the federal government is also trying to fund affordable housing nationwide and see units built on the ground. And so that is one of their struggles right now, is getting the money in the hands where it's needed the most. And not a lot of communities have the data and the information to support applications to CMHC or whatever entity is going to be looking after affordable housing funded projects with developers, or with, I should say, private enterprise is probably the better way, not necessarily.
Carol.
Thank you. I think, well, for my perception of this, I don't think it's just going to be straight census data. I don't think West Winds would at all approach us if it's just a case of census data type of information. And I know for a fact that West Winds is aware about High River, that there is definitely a need for housing for men between the ages of 40 and 60, that impoverished seniors are on the rise. They already know some of the target groups. And then that's where I don't think it's like, I don't want to think that it's just like a municipal or a federal census, that they're actually, they know that there's areas where they're going to do the deeper dive into. So I just wanted to say that they're very much, you know, I've talked to Loren and I've thought the same thing with Shelley, is that I'm glad to see that there's going to be a focus on housing for men, because that's a huge demand. I know when I worked at McBride, there's a lot of men in that age group that they're supporting multiple households, so due to divorce or life circumstances, and that they can't afford housing. So it's not, this is what I don't like about just that affordable housing kind of vision. This is all about homelessness. It's all gamut, seniors, single families, everything. So I just kind of wanted to put that in perspective, that those target groups are very much on the radar of this study or this needs assessment.
Okay. I will ask for a motion from Councillor McMillan. The council approved the funding of $14,000 to West Winds Communities Further Community Needs Assessment Program.
I'll give you that motion.
Okay, and I'm going to do the vote through roll call, please. So Councillor Masterman, how do you vote?
Make me start. Yes.
In favor? Councillor McMillan?
In favor?
Councillor Kinghorn?
In favor.
Councillor Nychuk?
In favor.
Councillor Cooey?
In favor.
Councillor Moore?
In favor.
Mayor Snodgrass in favor. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. 7.1 coal policy update. Not much has changed. A group of us met with Wade Clark within Minister Savage's office on Friday, questioning. So what their plan is between now and March 29th is to have this committee formed that's going to be kind of the delegates to conduct the public. I've said it so many times I can't even say it again. Public consultation. So we've got a lot of questions on, you know, who's choosing that committee, who's going to be on it, et cetera, et cetera. So none of those decisions have been made. It's obviously going to be directly chosen under Minister Sonia Savage with Alberta Energy under her office. That committee will be chosen with a secretariat of some kind leading it. So we're just kind of on the waiting thing. We should know more by the middle of the month, kind of where that's headed, but that's sort of where my involvement has been. Bruce, I'll let you go on your end.
Yeah, just thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. And just very quickly, I just wanted to report that so far by my count, and I'm trying to compile a list of all the municipalities that have made some kind of motions or taken some kind of action around the coal mining in opposition. Mainly, I haven't found any municipalities that have been, totally just in favor completely. They certainly, some have, you can tell they're in favor of coal, but they're still concerned about water. So there's 25 so far in Alberta. There's 2 in Manitoba, bless their hearts, McCreary, Manitoba, and St. Anne, Manitoba, just east of Winnipeg, and also one in Saskatchewan, Kanata Valley, which is a summer village council on Lost Mountain Lake. And as far as I can been able to tell, they're not really part of the North Saskatchewan and South Saskatchewan River, they're just, they said they're just in favor of clean water and doing whatever they can do to protect clean water. So I thought that was really neat. Clearwater Council, based in Rocky Mountain House, so right in the heart of Jason Nixon country, is meeting tomorrow. And the last time I checked, I believe there's 5 or 6 people and organizations presenting at Clearwater County, and all negative, fisheries biologists that are presenting on selenium, that type of thing, talking about tourism impacts, and certainly a lot of talk about watersheds. And after talking to Craig on the weekend, I sent all the members of Clearwater County and their CAO just my listing of with the motions that have been made of all the municipalities that I know about, and just with a very nice note, just saying I thought it might be helpful for you to see what some other municipalities have done. They're obviously, because they're in Jason Nixon country, they're in they're right in the thick of it. They'll be under all kinds of pressures. And I was really gratified to get a note today, which I forwarded to all of you, from Councillor Jim Duncan of Division 1, Clearwater County, just saying that thanking us for sending that list, and also saying that motions and statements made by other municipalities will be helpful to us as we formulate our own response around coal mining, water allocations, and just noted there's lots of perspectives, thoughtful concerns brought forward by other municipalities, and he said that he thought it was the municipalities more than anything that was probably instrumental in having the 1976 coal policy reinstated, and pushing the province to proceed with further consultation. So I have obviously no idea, what they're going to do at their council level tomorrow, but it's very interesting to me to get a note like that from somebody who is obviously looking beyond the Minister Nixon says it's okay, so we're we're supporting whatever the province wants to do. So it was just very very good to see that. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I get, and I know Craig gets this all the time. The people that I talk to, they are just so incredibly grateful to all of you for supporting the motions that that our council has passed, and unanimously. That I think that just surprises the heck out of people. That it's been unanimous. And, every vote has been 7-0. There have been some councils that have been 5-2 with 2 saying, why bite the hand that feeds you, and this will impact our relationship with the provincial government, and all that type of thing. And I just think, you guys, and I think we all should be very proud of, for Mayor Snodgrass leading us on this thing, but for us to deciding to do the right thing, and that's what it boils down to me is what the right thing is. It's not the politics and who, what party wants this to happen. And I'm so apolitical, and always have been. So anyway, I just wanted to share that because I thought it was neat, and I forwarded that letter to you guys. So thanks.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Bruce. Any other questions? Move on. Councillor McMillan, questioning council's return to council chambers. I'll let you go for it, Carol.
Thanks. I was just wanting to have that open discussion about what are council's thoughts about returning to in-person council chamber meetings.
No hands are coming up, so personally, I don't see any rush to it. I'm totally okay with waiting for a vaccine. Councillor Masterman?
You know, I have to say something. So I appreciate, you know, that we're having this discussion. I think it's important that we have this discussion. I for one, am quite happy with how we're doing council business, and I haven't had one resident saying, you know, when the heck are you guys going back to work? You know, there is not a thought that I've heard from anybody, any residents, that just because we're not meeting in council chambers means that we're not doing our job. People know we're doing our job, and certainly from a strictly you know, like selfish perspective, I'm of that age that you know, in late 60s, you know, among the vulnerable population. I'm not going. Karen and I really are not going anywhere. Like, we don't go to restaurants or bars or any place that means being around people. And also on the selfish perspective, I know that once we're back in council, we'll be masked. You know, we'd have to be masked, and being masked means you all know I'm hearing impaired. It will impact how I hear, and I want people to be masked even when they talk. I think we have to, if we were to go back to chambers. And I have absolutely no difficulty hearing you guys at all on microphones like this. And it's, I don't know, I because of the coal thing, I've watched some other councils in action, some that I won't name them, but some that are meeting back in council chambers, and to me it's almost a joke. Some of them, some of them will take their mask off to talk, and then won't put it back on, and the mayor isn't strong enough to say, you know, please put your mask back on. Yeah, perfect, Craig. Thanks for the prop. Yeah, you know, I just think it's you know, once we are back in council chambers, you know, I have no delusion that it's going to be the way it was before. I know I won't be able to talk to members of the public who are sitting there. I won't go up to them and talk to them and ask them how they're doing. I'm going to be masked when I talk to other councillors. I'm not going to be involved in chit chat. You know, I'm going to come in, do the job, and take off right away. Like, it's not going to be, for me at least, this is how I look at it, and I'm only one voice. It's not going to be, you know, just, you know, back to the way it was before. And I remember many months ago, you know, somebody, I think Craig asked me, you know, what would it take for you to, you know, agree to opening up George Lane Park or something? And I said, well, for COVID to be gone. Like, I like to think I'm not that naive, that, but I personally, I would feel way more comfortable if we were well into vaccinations and before we went back in. And you know, again, that's just how I feel about it. And there's some couple of very personal reasons there too. But you know, I'd love to hear how other people, you know, think about this as well. But I really don't think that the quality of our discussions, or, you know, we've still been very frank with each other, and we've had some great discussions, and I don't think that would have been any different than if we were in fact, I wouldn't want to talk as much in chambers right now, and many of you are probably thinking, well, that would be one way to shut you up, Masterman. So, okay, I'm done.
I'm thinking about heading back in now. Councillor Kinghorn had his hand up first.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass, and I appreciate the humor there, Councillor Masterman. I was on the website this morning. It looks like I'll be able to book my shot here in a couple of days based on my age. I think they said in 2 days, person's 64, something like that. I don't remember that exact age, but it's coming quick. It's coming really quick. I'm not comfortable sitting at home doing these council meetings. I just don't feel like I'm in that right place. I wonder if council would agree to some sort of a blended council meeting. I assume we're going to be on Zoom going forward for years and years to come as part of our regular meeting. I hope that's the case. I think it's a good thing to do, and I think it's great that it's being recorded and shared with the public. So really, I would like to see something blended where we each make a choice. Do we go and sit in chambers and have the tablet in front of us, just like we do today, and have debate and have discussion? I notice, Mayor Snodgrass, you're in chambers or mayor's office when you conduct these meetings. I would like to be sitting in chambers. Thank you.
Anybody that wants to go into chambers right now, I think, Chris, you're more than welcome to do that. If you're in that chambers, though, you have to wear a mask. That would be part of the gig. And that's where, my God, I can't even fathom. I'm all for masks, but man, they get old real fast when you got to have it on for an hour or two. I can barely get in and out of Canadian Tire, for Christ's sakes, no matter sitting in trying to conduct a council meeting and having discussions. But you can do that, absolutely, Jamie. If you want to bring your laptop and go sit in council chambers, 100%, that's available to you. I think it's all booked for us anyways, isn't it, Chris? Like, it's
That's
open
correct.
for us so that we can do it. Over to Kathy.
Thanks. I guess I'm of the mindset, as I understand it, the province is still encouraging us that can work at home to work at home. I consider this work, and so I feel that we should be following the province's recommendations in that case, in that regard. And personally, I'm going to throw in a little personal thing. I find it more efficient for my time, especially when we have 3 meetings that are separated out and we can't always gauge the length of those. And there's a lot of downtime in between. And having known the fact, I can't imagine our meeting 2 weeks ago that our major meeting went over 3 hours, and to have to participate in that meeting in a mask. I'm certainly willing to hold off until things are a little calmer, and as Bruce said, more vaccines are rolling out and where things are opened up more.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I was just going to say I get my vaccination on Friday, so I'll be all set to go. But
can you grab one for me?
Pardon?
Grab
Sure.
one for me while you're there.
Okay. I'm in the other arm.
I was going to say only if I get to give it.
That's fine. I don't care. Put it wherever you want. Oh, there's a couple places.
But I got a second one on April 19th as well. So I'll be all done by April. But I know, like right now, in my business, I have to wear a mask all day, and that is not fun to be talking to people totally all the time through a mask. It's one thing to go into a store wearing a mask and then out, but when you have a mask on all day long, it's not good. So I don't care one way or another of that, but I like the home atmosphere, and I think we're doing fairly well. in communicating and getting everything done. I know a lot of times when we have our council meetings and people look at the screen, they don't realize that we've talked about most of this stuff over and over again. And usually you don't have to ask a lot of questions so that if people see that we're all in favor or unanimous decisions, it's not that we haven't disagreed or come to a conclusion, but the consensus is it's in the council meeting, and it may look differently in a public meeting, but they're going to be screened all the time from now on anyway. So I just I do want one board meeting on the fourth Monday every month all morning, and go to council chambers and conduct the meeting from there with 6 different municipalities. And again, even if it's all screened off and everything like that, it's not fun having to wear a mask the whole time when you're in a meeting.
Councilor McMillan?
Thank you very much. And I just want to say thank you to fellow council for providing feedback. I just felt that because, you know, it had been a year, March 9th last year was our last in person. And I didn't realize that, I thought with the plexiglass, as well as being 6 feet apart, I didn't realize we had to wear a mask. So there's no way that I'm going to be masked up for 5 hours. So and I know these have been running efficiently. It was just, I thought it was important to bring it up, that to see how people are feeling, because that's the one thing I do have to say that I miss about, well, there's lots of things I miss about in person, but we don't really have our, you know, when we'd come into chambers and we'd have our little chats and you kind of get a feel for, and not about the agendas, but it would be that we could just say casually, hey, how are you feeling about this situation? So I appreciate everyone's feedback, because you know, we don't just randomly fire out an email saying, oh, by the way, when do you want to come back to council? So thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate your insight.
Mayor Snodgrass?
Yeah, go ahead.
What we'll do is we'll bring this back again when the province finally rescinds the order, the mandatory mask, indoor use of mandatory masks. And we'll have this conversation again. And by that time, we'll have some certainly some a better idea how the vaccinations are rolling out and who's being vaccinated, who hasn't. And we can just have this conversation and just touch base from that perspective when they release that, when they rescind that order, which we don't think will happen until middle of April. So that's kind of where we're sitting right now from that perspective. So if that's okay, we'll diarize that. And once that happens, we'll bring this back for touch base with council again.
Sounds good. Thanks for bringing it up, Carol. It's important that we're all on the same page with where we're headed. So it kind of gets to the point where you don't even think about it anymore. It's just da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So thanks for bringing it up. Council correspondence, a whole bunch of letters in support of our coal policy stuff. Big one there is we are still pounding the table and asking for the stop work order on the exploration. We still don't have that yet, and seems to be very reluctant to do it. So that will be getting louder and louder in the next couple of weeks for sure. So leading up to the public consultation. So nothing further. Meeting adjourned 4:33. Thanks very much. See you later.